I'm hankering for some borscht. Hello and welcome to what is going to be a rather more organised, hopefully, formula food than usual. This week we are making borscht. And I should say, when I say this week, what I mean is today is the 17th of September, and obviously borscht, Russian dish, we're cooking for the Russian Grand Prix this weekend, but it's not this weekend, it's next weekend. I'm cooking this in advance, so I'm not in such a rush, and I can get this out to you before the Grand Prix happens, so you have time to follow this recipe, make borscht, and enjoy it for the Russian Grand Prix. See, we're thinking ahead here, this is big brain thinking, we're planning. I think we've got this. Anyway, I say we're making borscht, we're actually starting off baking again, because it was so fantastic when I made bread way back for episode 1 of this, for the Hungarian Grand Prix, was that? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, we made bread for the Hungarian Grand Prix, we made just a rather nice white loaf. We're going back to making bread, in fact we're making some rather sort of black Russian sort of rye bread, and we're going to have that with our borscht, which is just like a sort of beetroot soup sort of thing. We'll get to the borscht in a bit, but first we've got to start making our bread, because obviously we've got to leave it to proof, we've got to bake it, it takes about 2 hours to get it done, and at the moment it is coming up to 12 o'clock, so we should have some lunch ready for 2 p.m, which is good, because I'm hungry. So anyway, as usual, I've got our ingredients ready, they're all over here. Maybe we'll do a thing where we move the camera over here, so as I you can sort of see them as I point to them. So yes, our ingredients. We have 550 grams of our rye flour here. We have 2 tablespoons of soft brown sugar, 7 grams of yeast, 1 tablespoon of ground salt, 175 millilitres of milk, 175 millilitres of water, and in the background is a saucepan that we're going to put some of these together in, start boiling them, then we're going to obviously add in the flour, make a dough. And that's where we're going to go from there. But anyway, there are our ingredients, laid out nicely, ready to go, and it's time to start making some bread, I suppose. So the first step in this recipe, according to the instructions I have just outshot of camera, we need to put our milk, our water and our sugar in a small saucepan and heat very gently, stirring constantly for just a few seconds until the liquid is lukewarm and the sugar has dissolved. Then obviously we'll take the pan off the heat and pour the mixture into a bowl. We have a bowl here, it's a bowl. So water and milk into the small saucepan. Water goes in, milk goes in, and our sugar. In that goes. And we'll give it just a little bit of heat. Spoon. And we'll just stir the sugar into this. Okay, so our milk, water, sugar mixture thing is now pretty much lukewarm, so we can take the heat out from underneath that, and then the next thing we need to do is put it into our bowl, and then we're going to mix in our yeast, and we're going to leave the yeast to feed for about 10 minutes, and it should get nice and foamy on top. So we'll take our sugary milky water into the bowl. There. I should point out, you're now at the opposite end of the kitchen to where you normally are, because there's a lovely light coming through the window behind you, which is lighting me up beautifully. It also means that I have to keep walking past you, the viewer, the camera, to get to the sink. Anyway, milk, sugar, water in bowl, add in our yeast, just 7 grams of that. Pre-weighed out. Again, no one likes to see me just weighing and chopping ingredients, so do it all in advance these days. It makes it seem more professional, or like I have a team of researchers who are just here to prepare my ingredients. They are not, that is all down to me. I love the fact that you can add yeast to just liquid and it immediately smells like bread. It's fantastic. So, yeast in the bowl with our milk, our sugar and our water. It's quite warm. And we're just going to leave that to sort of do its thing. At this point, obviously, yeast is still a living organism, really, and we're going to be relying on this yeast to sort of respire. It's going to start sort of consuming the sugar, breaking the sugar down, creating different starch molecules, and equally creating a nice bit of foam on top, just starting to trap a bit of carbon dioxide in there, which should, hopefully, give us a rather nice bread. There's your biology for this week. Do I usually put biology into these videos? I don't usually. Anyway, we're going to leave that for 10 minutes. Back in a minute. Okay, so our yeast has been sitting here doing its little yeasty thing, I suppose, doing what it needs to do, and it is pretty much ready to be mixed in with the flour. We've got a little bit of a foam forming on the top. It's bubbling away quite nicely, smells very bready, which is usually a good sign when you're trying to make bread. So next we're going to simply take that, we're going to add it to our flour. Well, actually first what we need to do is we need to take our salt. We have 1 tablespoon of salt. It's in just a little measured pot here. Full focus on the little pot, do your thing. Maybe it won't, I don't know. Anyway, we've got our salt, dump it in with the flour. Try and get all of it in. We're going to mix that together well, so we've got a sort of salty flour. And then we're going to dump in our yeast, milk, water, sugar, stir it together with a wooden spoon, stir it together with our hands. You'll get a lovely hand shot. Nearly said the wrong thing there. And just puffed a load of the flour up. And once we've got the that mixed together, we'll have a nice dough. We'll tip it out onto our work surface, and then you'll have another gratuitous kneading scene of my hands working away at the dough. I'm beginning to realise this show is going to eventually just become completely full of double entendres. I don't apologise for that. So, let's just mix together our salt and flour first. So we've got our salt incorporated into our flour. Now we just need to make a little well in the middle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pour into that little well. I don't know how well that well shows up on the camera. There's a lot of wells in that sentence. Any well? Oh well, anyhow. We're going to add our yeast, flour, water mixture into that well. Like that. And then we're just going to stir it in with a wooden spoon and then eventually with our hands until we should have what's, according to the instructions at least, is a nice flat, sort of bubbly dough. Can already see the dark colour of this bread really starting to come through. It is supposed to be like a sort of very dark rye sort of black bread. You can do this recipe with sort of 50-50 rye and white flour if you want a slightly lighter loaf. For sort of full-on visual impact, I've gone for just all-out regular 550 grams of the rye flour, whole grain as well, just to try and make it that little bit darker to give you a real impression of proper black bread. As you can see, that's still quite warm actually, especially where the yeast water mixture has been sitting on the oven. Obviously we've got our oven preheating already to do the baking stage, but anyway, it's also helping keep the kitchen nice and warm, so hopefully this will prove well as two. So I think we're getting to the point we need to start mixing with our hands. This is where things get messy. option, add caraway seeds to your bread mixture if you really want to sort of add a little extra crunch, a bit extra chew. I think caraway seeds, are they high in omega-3? I think they might be. So very good addition if you're quite health conscious. Okay, we're starting to get a very firm, very sticky dough. It's holding itself together quite well, as you can see, and I think the next stage is going to be we're going to tip it out onto a floured work surface and work with it and knead it until it's nice and smooth, almost silky in texture. Same as before, really, when making bread. Try and get it as silky as possible. Also try and not get so much of it on your hands you can't operate the camera. This is the one flaw of doing a one-man cookery show, is as soon as you get your hands mucky, you can't touch the camera. Damn. Right. Okay, so we've been kneading away at our dough. I've worked up quite a bit of a sweat actually doing that. It's a very hard dough to work with, very resistant to sort of really giving it some welly. So anyway, we've kneaded that away for about 10 minutes, and next up we need to transfer it to a lightly oiled bowl. I have one here. It's just run the oil around the edges again. Just a bowl really, put some oil in the bottom of it, whiz it around the edges, mop up any excess with a bit of kitchen roll, and then we're going to slap the dough in there. We're going to leave the dough to prove for, according to our recipe, an hour and a half, or until it has roughly doubled in size. That's what we're going to be aiming for. We're going to be aiming for roughly twice as much dough as we initially started with, courtesy of our proving process. If you remember when I made the white loaf that went with the goulash for the Hungarian, was it goulash for the Hungarian Grand Prix? I think it was, yeah. The goulash for the Hungarian Grand Prix. I didn't prove it for anywhere, well, it proved it a little short of what it really needed. So we're not going to make that mistake again. We're going to, if anything, prove this a little excessively. We want to really give it a very good sort of airy texture in the middle. If anything, always go a bit longer with your proving, seems to be the tip that I've generated from doing this. So just spread this oil around a bit more. Come on. There we go, nicely oiled. Take our dough, squidge it in. There we go. And then, like I said, we're just going to top that off with some cling film. We want to create a really nice airtight seal around the edges, either to go and dig out our cling film roll, because we don't use cling film, or we try not to. This is about the only time we ever really have to use cling film. So as usual, I have to go and find wherever we hide it and drag it out into the light of day. There we go. Is that going to tear? No, I'm going to need scissors. And then we're going to leave our dough, if I hold it up so you can see it on camera, dough in our cling film. Run the oil around it a bit more. Lovely. Ooh, yes. So we'll leave our dough just here on the nice warm oven. We'll leave that to prove away for, like I said, about an hour and a half, possibly even closer to 2 hours, to have got roughly double the amount that we started with. Then obviously we'll go through the usual baking process, knock it back, a little bit of flour. Do we prove it again after that? No, we just knock it back with the knuckles, then knead for another minute or so. Then once we've done that, obviously a bit more flour, shape it, stick it on a tray, and into the oven it goes to bake away. In the meantime, we will probably start preparing ingredients for the borscht, which you might have spotted in the back of shop. There's bits accumulating on the table, getting ready to make our beetroot soup. So we'll leave that to do its thing. Okay, we're back in the kitchen. It's been well over 2 hours, almost 2.5 hours I should think, since we last left our dough to prove. It's not massively risen, which has me concerned. It's bubbled up on top, which means that something's going on, but it's not huge given the time we've left it to prove for. I'm beginning to think that potentially the milk and water mixture was a little hot when we added the yeast. It might have knocked the yeast out of sorts, but we're going to plow on, see how this goes. The next step we need to do is knock the dough back, so we need to lightly flour up our work surface. Again, we're going to keep making a mess of the work surfaces all day trying to make this, and it's an absolute pain because I have to clean them down afterwards. Anyway, we're going to flour the work surface, knock the dough back, leave it to prove just lightly covered on the baking sheet for 40 minutes or so until it is doubled in size once more. Hopefully then we'll see a bit more of an improvement in size. We've got the oven back online and running to make a nice warm oven ready to bake this in eventually. Obviously once this starts proving, we can then start to make our borscht. We're going to actually have it for dinner instead. So we're going to have it for lunch, we're going to have it for dinner. Good thing I allowed plenty of time to film this video today because it's just been chaotic. Anyway, if you hear any noise running away in the background, that's just the dishwasher running with stuff in it. So knock back the dough. We're ready to do that. We're going to have to unpig all the cling film off the top here. We'll try and reuse this cling film. Just set this to the table over here. Oh, reuse that. Now our dough. It smells alright. If I hold it up to the camera, maybe you'll be able to see what we're talking about. It looks like sand with excrement in it. It's the only way of describing it really at this point in time. lightly floured work surface. So flour. Take my watch off, otherwise it's going to get messy. Don't know how good the lighting is from this angle still, it's a little bit dodgy. I stand a bit back from the light, don't stare up at the light either. Okay, our dough. Oh. Okay, it doesn't seem terrible. It's got a crumb starting to form in there. So we'll just... It's not massively airy in there, which makes me concerned. I was expecting it to be a lot more spongy at this point in time, but... Perhaps a lot of it comes out in this second proving process, I don't know. It doesn't feel any different to when we put it in. A little lighter, potentially. Now I'm just yammering on about dough. So here we have it, we have our ball of dough. According to the instructions, put the dough on a floured work surface, knock it back with your knuckles, knead for another minute. So we've given it another minute, sort of moving it around, a little bit more flour into it. And then shape the dough into a flat oval, pulling the dough from the top and sides and tucking it underneath to make a neat shape. So we'll just sort of fold it under itself. Or basically fold it on top of itself and then we'll just turn it upside down, I suppose. Should probably begin to test run my recipes. That way we won't run into so many problems. Oh well. Anyway, we've got our dough into some sort of a shape. It just looks like a massive poo at this point. Anyone who's done paleontology, this looks more like a coropterolite than anything. Fossilised poo is what this is starting to look like. So we'll slap that on our baking tray. Place loaf on a baking tray lined with baking parchment and score the surface 4 times with a sharp knife. None of the knives in this kitchen are sharp, it's really annoying. Cover it loosely with the oiled cling film and leave to prove for a further 40 to 50 minutes until it has doubled in size once more. Well, it didn't double in size the first time, so it's got a lot of doubling to do. So let's get a knife out. We'll use this one because we'll be cutting vegetables with it shortly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cling film. And just drape that over the top. Like that, I suppose. And then we'll leave that for about 40 minutes. So, Alexa, set a timer for 40 minutes. Good. So, timer set for 40 minutes. Let's chop some vegetables for the borscht. Okay, so we've cleaned down the surface. We've got our bread over here proving away nicely. Don't know what's going to happen to that. Might work, might not. Don't know. It won't be the first fail we've had filming this, although this might be the first fail you see, because I've already filmed another episode for the 3rd Italian Grand Prix, the one that's going to be at Imola, which I won't spoil for you, but obviously it's kind of Circuit Emiliano Romagna or something, isn't it? It's in the region of Bologna, so you can take a guess at what we're going to make for that. But there's a fail coming up in that. So this will be the first fail, could be the first fail you see on screen. Anyway, back to what we're supposed to be doing now. We're going to get ready to actually make the borscht, the actual soup, the beetroot soup. It's like a sort of slightly bitter, sort of beetrooty soup, really quite thick, which of course requires beetroots. We've got some here in a bag. They came from the supermarket. We need roughly, on the ingredients list, 450 grams of diced prepared beetroot, so we're going to dice those up. 1 finely sliced onion, half a finely sliced red cabbage head. Don't know what we're going to do with the other half of that. The ingredients say 1 large finely diced carrot. I don't have 1 large one, so I'm going to stick 3 little chanterelles together, like that, and call that 1 large one. I mean, it probably won't be quite accurate, but make do with what we've got in. We need 2 large tomatoes, so I've got some big ones here. Let's do the makeup thing, we haven't done that for a while. There we go, look at that. We're going to pick 2 of those, peel them and chop those up. 1 large waxy potato, so I've just got a large potato, really. Potato. Dice that up as well. Everything that goes into this is diced, including 1 stick of celery. Everything is diced up along with 2 cloves of garlic. Stick it all in a pan, cook it away, add in some beef stock. I think we need 1.5 litres of beef stock. Season with a little bit of dill and serve with a bit of dill on top at the end as well. And basically it's whack everything in a pan, wait for it to cook down and sort of become a bit mashy and soupy. It's a soup. It's really, really very easy. I think there's only 4 steps to it, one of which is serve with a dollop of sour cream and dill. So it's 3 steps, this dish. Really nice and easy. We're going to start preparing it nicely in advance so we can leave it on the hob simmering away, just let the flavours meld together, because I'm a fan of slow, long cooking dishes. And equally, once we've got it prepared, at least on the go, means we can figure out what we're going to do with this bread. It looks to be proving, it looks to be getting bigger. Yep, still proving. Anyway, we're going to cut, and it's going to be a time-lapse of me preparing all the vegetables, because no one wants to see me do it in real time. That takes ages and is boring. So cue the funky music and let's get cutting. Okay, where are we now? We are at the point where all of our ingredients for our borscht are chopped. Our celery, our carrots, our onions, our potato, our red cabbage, we've got some butter in the bowl at the back, we've still got our dill here, we've got our beetroot. God, that took a long time to wash my hands clean-ish. That's still quite purpley stained even, look at that. Looks like I've been strangling Thanos. Anyway, yeah, beetroot, tomato, garlic. All ready to go into the pan. We've got some butter there. We've got 1 tablespoon of olive oil in the bottom of the pan. We're going to start heating that up in a minute, but the first thing we need to do is put our bread into bake. We'll get the cling film off the top, pop that in the bin. Right. So our bread has increased in size a bit while it's been proving. I'll bring it over. It looks sort of like bread now. It's a bit cracked in places, so I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but we'll find out, I guess. First time for everything, and as per the rules, I don't test drive my recipes before we make them. So this is going to go into an oven at 170 degrees, fan oven 170 degrees, for 40 minutes. So, hopefully that's set to the right height. I don't know, we'll see what happens. Alexa, set a timer for 40 minutes. Excellent. While that works away, while that bakes away doing its thing, we need to focus on starting the borscht itself. So we've got our oil in the pan, like I said, we'll get the lid off, get the hob going. Cool. And we need to start frying off some of the vegetables. As usual, you start with the harder vegetables. So according to the recipe just off camera. Heat the vegetable oil, I'm using olive oil and butter in a large heavy bottom saucepan. That is one of these. We'll pop our butter in. Come on. I don't know why I'm using my fingers for this. This seemed like a bad idea. Oh well. Smear it on there, that will trickle down. So, oil and butter go into the saucepan, and then we're going to add the carrot, celery and onion and cook gently for a few minutes. Then we add in the beetroot, the potato and the garlic. So 3 ingredients and 3 ingredients and the remaining ingredients, so it seems. So we'll turn that nice and low. Still mix that around. So, celery, carrot, potato. No, celery, carrot, onion. I'm trying to read the script from miles away. Celery, carrot. Onion. It's going to be a big amount of soup, especially because we've got to add 1.5 litres of stock to this as well. Christ. And we'll leave those to brown off really, and then we'll come back in a second, or we'll do a fancy transition, and we'll put in the next ingredients. Okay, so our onions, our celery, our carrot have been sizzling away rather nicely in here. I don't know if you can hear me over the sizzle, but they're sizzling very nicely. They are well coated in the butter and oil. So we're on to our next step, which is going to be adding in our beetroot and our potato and the garlic. So, potato, in it goes. The potato looks a little bit purple because I cut it up immediately after cutting up the beetroot on the same board with the same knife. So everything's going to start to look a purpley, reddy colour, which is sort of what borscht is supposed to look like, which is good. We're heading in the right direction colour-wise at least. Flavour we can sort out later. And the garlic, in it goes. We'll give that a stir in. Purple. Smells rather interesting as well. You've got the brightness of that onion still sitting at the bottom of the pan. Then you get this rather tangy smell from that beetroot as it's starting to cook and fry out. And everything's going red now. Look at what it's done to the spoon already. It's already starting to go purple. So, put the lid on that, we'll leave that for a few minutes then. The next ingredients to go into our pot are the stock. Season it with salt and black pepper, and then bring to the boil and simmer for 15 minutes. So that'll eventually give us a rather sort of watery soup. We'll then add, that'll be absorbed by the potatoes as well, giving us a bit of a sort of thicker sludge. Then we add in the cabbage and the tomatoes, and that's it. We leave it to simmer and go. And currently there is about 28 minutes left on the bread, which is baking down there. Camera can't see that, but it is down there. That's where the oven is, and the bread is... Sort of looks like bread at the moment, so that's good stuff. Keep doing your thing, bread. Right, what was I up to? Okay, so that's been frying away. We've got some stock ready to go, and we're into the next phase of this. And if I just grab this from almost off camera, we have 1/2 litre of barely dissolved OXO cubes in here, making a really rich stock. So we need to add 1.5 litres. So we're going to pour in 1/2 litre, and then, big brain thinking right here, we can add another 1/2 litre, rinsing the jug, and a final 1/2 litre. There, fully rinsing the jug out. We'll just scrape the remaining OXO cubes up. And in they go. So now all of our beef stock, our stock cubes, are all in the pan. The precariously full pan, which I'm also concerned that I may have now stained purple. As you can see, it's like a tan coloured pan. It will no longer be a tan pan, it will be a purple pan. Got a lot of similar sounding sibilants. Is that the right word? I don't know. Lost track. Been working on this recipe all day. All I'm thinking about is just trying not to turn things in a largely white coloured kitchen purple. Mother would kill me. Anyway, we've got our stock in here. We're going to leave it to simmer away for a bit, and then we'll season it once we know what it starts to taste like. So we'll just put a bit more heat into this so this will simmer. Oh yes. And cross our fingers that this works. You know what time it is. Right, the alarm has just gone off. The bread has had its 40 minutes in the oven. I can't stand that close, although it's the top of my head falls out of frame. Yes, the bread has had its 40 minutes in the oven. Just tuck this up out of the way. And we're going to get it out and see how it's looking. We might give it a few minutes more. I've always found that with this oven, sometimes with bread, it just needs a little bit longer. So yeah, 40 minutes according to the actual recipe, which as usual will be in the description below. There'll be a link to it in the description below over on Food Tribe, because that's pretty much what I write for when I do this nonsense. Yeah, let's get the bread out and see how it's looking. Okay, so I had my suspicions about this, but that's bread. That looks like... Sounds kind of hollow like bread. Looks a little bit soft in places, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it back in the oven just for an extra 5 minutes, just to really get it through. Keep an eye on the crust, obviously then we'll know if it starts to get a little too well done. We just don't want the doughy middle. Should probably take off the Mickey Mouse gloves. Back to the soup, the Borscht, which I don't know if you can see it on the, you can't see it on the edge of frame. I've actually blitzed this with a blender. I've just given it a couple of pulses with a blender just to sort of break a few bits of it up. I like a slightly thicker soup, but personal preference. The traditional version of this, it's quite a sort of loose soup. It's just sort of chunks of the vegetables in the sort of, I was about to say vegetable juices or fruit juice, and I was like, no, that's not what it is. Yeah, that's sort of what it is. It's the vegetables floating in the sort of soupy sauce. I like a slightly thicker one, a really sort of solid thing that you could almost chew. So that's why I pulsed mine with a blender just to make it a bit smoother. And that's what we've got here. We've got it down to just below a simmer. So bring that back up just to a slight rolling, not quite a rolling boil. Still got lumps of vegetables moving around in there. We need to add the final 2 ingredients. You might spot the dill just here in the back corner. I've added a bit of dill already. This is just dried dill because I haven't got any fresh to put on top. So put the dried dill in now, and it's given it a really sort of bright floral sort of scent to it. It's absolutely fantastic. It smells really nice. I had my doubts about cooking this. I thought, oh, it's going to be a really bitter sort of Russian stew. Ugh. It smells fantastic so far. So we've got all of our cabbage to go in. And try and get it in without scattering it all over the hob. That would be ideal. So that's the cabbage in. And lastly, the tomatoes. In they go, dribbling tomato juice all over the hob. Better clear that up before Mum comes back from holiday. Tomatoes. Pan is getting very full. Hopefully we'll simmer it down a bit. I think the completely non-casual nature to which I'm trying to scrape things off a chopping board suggests that I am not a professional chef by any means. It's taken me a lot of effort just to get something from a board into a pan. I am not a professional chef or baker or cook or anything along those lines. I'm a muppet with a camera and a kitchen, and that's pretty much how this usually rolls. Anyway, back to the borscht. The bread is still trickling away. We'll check in on that in a second. We'll just stir the tomatoes and the cabbage in and give it a bit more heat because we don't want crunchy cabbage in this. We want everything to be nice and soft. It looks quite nice already, actually. I'm hankering for some borscht. I'm really actually quite excited to try this. It smells beautiful. The richness coming from the beef stock, there's still that overwhelming sort of tang from that beetroot. It gives it this beautiful colour, which you can't see over there on the camera, but I'll move it over here in a minute so you can see like a B-roll shot of it. And it looks beautiful. The colours are stunning. So we'll stir that in, put the lid on, leave it to simmer away until we're ready to serve up, I think. Okay, time to put the Mickey Mouse mittens back on, and let's just see how that bread's doing. You can't see me here because I'm out of shot, but it looks lovely. Again, it's not exceptionally dark on the outside. So we're going to leave it for a little while longer. We'll just give it a minute or two more just to bake away. We want a really nice crisp outside on this rye bread, but hopefully we should have a lovely fluffy inside. Although given the way that it was proving, I don't know, we'll have to see. Could be quite a dense, chewy bread. Might be good for soaking up the soup. Who knows? Never tried this before. Never tried this before. I've never had any of this before. It's all new. Okay, so as you can tell, I've got the Mickey Mouse gloves back on. The soup is bubbling away quite nicely. The borscht, look at it go. Bubble, bubble, bubble. I've had a cheeky little taste. I'm not disappointed with how this tastes, actually. This tastes a lot better than I was anticipating it would. I quite like a beetroot taste. I like a sort of spicy beetroot. I like a pickled beetroot. So the flavour isn't awful to me. I enjoy its flavour. It's still simmering away. The tomatoes are still incorporating, so it's taking a little bit of the bitterness off of it, giving it a really very bright red sweet colour, but it looks fantastic. It smells amazing. It tastes pretty damn good, actually. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about is the bread. We're going to see if the bread is done. And because I'm still using this camera angle, because of the fantastic light, look at how well I'm illuminated. We're going to go back into the oven, and we're going to see how the bread's doing, which means dropping off camera. Well, here is the bread. It looks like bread. It sounds like bread. There's a cooling rack somewhere in this kitchen. I'm going to go find it. And then we're going to put the bread on it for a minute. As if by magic, a cooling rack appears. Oh, that's come off of there beautifully. It's very dense. Let's just listen to the bottom of this again. Holding it really close to my chest so you can hear it on my microphone. Doesn't look like much. Leave that to cool. Is that ASMR? When you do the scrunchy thing? I don't know. Then we'll leave the bread to cool for a minute. We've got the borscht bubbling away. We've got some sour cream in the fridge ready to just dollop on top. Give that a stir. Oh, mesmerised by this really deep maroon colour. This looks like very similar in colour. I'm colourblind, so I might be wrong here. But it looks very similar in colour to the special livery Ferrari were running for their 1000th GP, which went really well for them. Congratulations to Alex Albon actually for that as well. Really, really well. That was his first ever podium. Finally got on with Red Bull. Well earned. A race of attrition is what they would likely call it, especially in the first and second corner. Anyway, I'm muttering away about Formula 1. We'll probably cut away at this point. Okay, here comes the important step. We're going to cut open the bread and see what it looks like. Oh, it's sort of worked. It's a bit doughy at the bottom, but in fact it's a bit doughy all the way through. It's very... Yes, it's very doughy. In fact, it's almost still raw in places, which is unfortunate. I'll try and hold this up to the camera so it's in the light. Go on, pull focus on the bread. There we go. So we can see we started to have a crumb forming. It definitely could have done with a lot longer to bake, potentially. But if we pull this off and... It's not like it tasted vile. In fact, it tastes very nice. But yeah, you can see it's very dense. There's not a huge amount of air pockets going into it. Could have definitely used a lot longer to prove. Potentially my water and milk mixture was a little too hot when I added my yeast. Tastes like shredded wheat actually. I quite like the taste of this. The crust that we've got form on it is absolutely wonderful, really nice firm crust. But inside it could have just done with, potentially my yeast has gone off, might need fresh yeast, something along those lines, because it just hasn't proven enough and we haven't got enough air actually in this bread mixture to give us a really light dough. And that's why we've got, if you look at this piece here especially, I'll try and hold this up in camera and in focus. That is almost smooth. There's no air pockets in that at all, apart from where it's been folded. Which is a shame, but well. That's what we get. I never claimed to be a baker.